This is the story of the one. As a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility, he knows keeping the line up and running is a top priority. That's why he chooses Grainger. Because when a drive belt gets damaged, Grainger makes it easy to find the exact specs for the replacement product he needs. And next day delivery helps ensure he'll have everything in place and running like clockwork. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I haven't listened to anything you've said in the last 20 seconds.
Damn it, Trevor.
Oh, God, I hate you so much.
Well, it's you. We can cross off the reading.
I watch almost everything, and the majority of it is terrible.
What is this podcast about?
My recorder keeps turning off.
Damn it, Trevor. Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of No Win Scenario with Trevor and Don. My name is Don Schechter, and always we have Trevor, no last name. T-Bone? What's your nickname, Trev?
Why do you have to make an issue out of it? Why can't you just say Trevor and move on?
Because Don Schechter and Trevor sounds like I'm forgetting that you have a last name.
Well, then don't give your last name. I mean, no one cares.
But you know what people care about, Trevor? I've noticed now that we're deep into season 1 here of our podcast, is that people are really responding well on our website, where we call it No Win Scenario Podcast, two friends who hate each other talking sci-fi. That two friends hating each other who hate each other talking sci-fi is really resonating with our audience.
See, I don't see that at all, because I literally saw the Facebook post and I just see laugh emoji reactions, and that is not a lie. So we're already
think it's funny. They think it's funny.
We're already getting crapped on by the audience, and you know what?
I think we should really clear the air, though, because some people are confused about that two friends who hate each other talking sci-fi. Are we actually friends here, Trevor?
I would...
Because you tell me you hate me all the time.
I would definitely say we are very good friends. We just are complete, total opposites. And, like, the truth of the matter is, and I really
I'm short and handsome, and you're tall, and you?
I truly believe this. This isn't an insult. After the last 15 years, I've kind of concluded I'm your only friend. Like, I have never met another friend of yours. You've met a few of my friends, but I've never met another friend of yours. Never.
Well, here's the truth, Trevor.
You give a bunch of names, but
can I tell you the truth?
They're not real.
I don't like to monetize my friends, and I'm trying to monetize you.
Yeah, that is apparent.
I'm failing, though. I'm failing horribly. Although I will say that after our first episode got, the ads going, I was really shockingly happy to hear a sausage ad for Whole Foods. That's actually, it was a sausage ad mentioning that they sell this type of sausage at Whole Foods. And I was, for some reason, got a real kick out of that. Did that make your day?
Did you just plug a grocery store on...
oh my God! The ads are working for free.
Why?
This is the last free ad I'll ever do for anyone.
Why are you doing that?
But I don't know. I got a kick out of it. It went from sausage and Whole Foods to No Win Scenario podcast. It felt good.
Two guys fighting each other.
I was directing this thing at work, and I literally had a friend message me saying, "How's it going?" I'm like, "I'm kind of more excited over the 5 cents we made with you listening to my podcast than the work that I'm doing now directing something." But anyway, we'll leave it alone for now. Because I am very excited for our special guest today, Jeremy Benning, cinematographer from The Expanse, The Boys. But that's the sci-fi part. He's done a ton of other work, documentary and other feature work as well. Yeah, so I'm super excited.
The documentary work is really good.
So I'm super excited. I've been following his work for quite some time. He's also interested in Foley, which is basically sound effects that you do practically for film and television. So that's super interesting. So stay tuned for that. But Trevor, my understanding is you just recently got onto The Expanse.
Yes, I saw the first episode. Was not looking forward to it.
What do you look forward to? Barbie? Is that really it?
Just
Barbie?
What do I look forward to? I look forward to Reservation Dogs. Probably the best show I'm watching on TV right now. Not sci-fi.
So hold up, Trev.
Yeah.
This is a podcast that we lead out with sci-fi.
Right.
And yet it doesn't seem that you have any kind of deep knowledge or interest in science fiction. What is going on here?
I saw I saw a 35 millimeter print of Tarkovsky's Solaris, which is a science fiction, which is a landmark in science fiction. Have you ever seen Solaris, Don?
I've seen both versions of Solaris.
No, you haven't.
I've seen both versions of Solaris.
Oh, who did the second version?
But can't recall.
Yeah, he's just a little brilliant director named Steven Soderbergh. You know, just one of the best out there. That's all.
The problem with Solaris, as I pronounce it, as I think most people pronounce it, I did fall asleep through both versions.
Oh my God, you are so pathetic. You are so pathetic. Both of those films, both versions, excellent, riveting. And yes, I do love Soderbergh's remake. I think it's very smart. I just recently watched the Jodorowsky Dune documentary. Literally just saw it about 2 months ago. And I thought it was very, very good. And it just shows what could have been.
Well, my brother was nice enough to get me a DVD or Blu-ray of that documentary a few years ago, and as soon as I find a mailbox to play it in, I will watch the documentary. But I am excited to see it one of these days.
Do you even own a 4K Blu-ray player?
I do not, because I got burned. Because years ago, when there was a choice between HD DVDs and Blu-rays, I chose HD DVD, so I had an HD DVD player.
So did I,
and that lasted like 4 months.
Nah.
And that was it. So I just kind of said, you know what, I'm all in on digital, and that's it.
I was able to resell all my HD DVD player and the movies that I bought for a good price, so I'm not worried about it.
That explains that palatial environment that I see you living in behind you.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah, where every ounce is dedicated to your cat. It's just a mecca of cat toys and cat paraphernalia. So The Expanse, Trevor, you just started it. I love the show, but your impressions before we get into our conversation.
My original impression was that if Don loves something, there really is a 90% chance that I'm not going to like it. Where our tastes are that much the opposite. They rarely run parallel with each other. I watched the first episode of The Expanse, and I thought it was very compelling. And I would like to watch more. I don't know when I'm going to get to it. I thought it looked really good. I thought our cinematographer that we'll be interviewing, Jeremy, I thought that he brought, and I know people hate this word, using it with regards to television, but I thought a lot of it was very cinematic, which is amazing to see that level of craft brought to TV. A lot of the shots were fantastic, and the story started out really, really good. And I like the whole Philip Marlowe angle of it a lot, but it's already been spoiled for me that that kind of goes away. And knowing that, I kind of don't want to continue with it.
It doesn't go away. There's just the world opens up more, but it doesn't go away.
Yeah. See, these are the lies that Don tells in order to convince me to keep going with the show. And when he starts lying, that just shows me, that gives me more conviction to not continue watching.
You know, it reminds me of Breaking Bad, where I thought Breaking Bad always got better every episode. It got more interesting and more compelling. And I thought The Expanse started strong. It just kept going and kept going. But you know, even season 2, I thought every episode in the beginning of season 2 could have been a season finale. It was that interesting and that meaningful. There were a good number of episodes. Things happened. The story moved. A lot of things happened. You're gonna hate this, but I felt like even though the story couldn't have been more different, I should say. The style was different. It was like a modern Babylon 5 in terms of how it took a lot of its content very seriously, and whether that was how they filmed it, how people moved in space, how ships moved, how people were treated, different classes of people. So you're gonna enjoy it. I know you will. And just if you keep watching it, I promise to keep going with Neon Genesis Evangelion. Did I say it right?
Evangelion? Oh my God, no, you didn't even pronounce it correctly. The second you start talking Babylon 5, you see the top of my microphone has this like metal grated pattern that's kind of rough against the skin. And the second you start talking about Babylon 5, I took this and I just started shaving the skin off my face like it's a cheese grater. because I am so sick of you talking about that show. And let's go back to the very beginning of this. Okay, I want to go back to the because you said something that blew my mind. You said The Expanse reminds you of Breaking Bad?
In that every episode in Breaking Bad got better.
The Expanse reminds you of Breaking Bad.
Yes. The experience of it. The experience of watching it.
Okay.
Where it got better and better all the way through the end.
Okay.
Did you watch Breaking Bad?
Yes, twice.
It's a wonderful show.
I just want to say now that I've watched more than a handful of episodes of Babylon 5, and I mean, since we're being so open, Babylon 5 reminded me of some of the crappiest episodes of Knight Rider I've ever seen in my life.
Wait, there were no bad episodes of Knight Rider. First of all, not one episode was bad.
And what reminds me of what they have in common is that they're both not very compelling.
Trevor.
If you insult Babylon 5, it directly goes to Don's ego, and he just wears pain on his face. This is how much ride or die he is for that. It is. He thinks it's the greatest thing ever created in the history of fiction. I mean, am I wrong?
You are not wrong.
Yeah. See, there you go.
The look that you're seeing,
and it reminds him of Breaking Bad. Like, this is great. Greatest piece of fiction ever, and it reminds him of Breaking Bad. Okay. Yep. Okay. Makes sense to me.
The Wire. No.
Well, The Wire, along with Twin Peaks, are the two greatest shows made in the West. That, I mean, not up for debate. Facts.
V, the original V. I'll throw that up there.
I watched V as a kid, and I was too young for it because seeing people's, with
skin come off,
hanging, that was like, I can't deal with this.
I saw that when I was in elementary school. You must have been in like college then, high school. Scared.
I'll give you one.
Yeah.
One of the best sci-fi shows.
Please.
From that era, V. The best sci-fi show that was on TV from that era. Mm-hmm. Max Headroom.
Okay. We actually just talked about it here at work the other day.
Excellent show.
I didn't know that in Chicago there was this thing where someone took over the airwaves and like broadcast like someone wearing that mask or something for a while and took over the airwaves. Good show. I was a little young for that one. But like I used to watch, talk about deep cuts, you talked about Knight Rider. Time Tracks. Does that ring a bell?
Yes,
Time
totally.
Tracks? I used to watch all this stuff. I actually used to tape on VHS all those shows in those blocks, and I just had VHS tapes everywhere of that. But I don't really think anyone's interested in this, Trevor. So my pained face earlier was all about how much of your nonsense I would have to cut out.
Yeah. I mean, we said this was only going to be a few minutes, and we're at 18 minutes already. So,
So I think 18 minutes. Oh, yeah, you can count. Look at that. So I think before we do any more damage to our friendship here, Trevor, I think it's time to bring out our guest. So everyone stay tuned. Up next, cinematographer Jeremy Benning.
This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. All so that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Lowe's knows that free makes everything better. That's why our rewards members get free standard shipping on the things they need and want, starting at Silver Key status every day. Savings for rewards members add up fast, so why wait? Join for free today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Not available in Alaska and Hawaii. Exclusions and more terms apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/shipping terms. Subject to change.
My name is Jeremy Benning. I'm a director of photography. I live in Toronto, Ontario. I shoot a lot of episodic television. I've got a history of doing commercials and, music videos and documentaries, and it sort of led me to working on a lot of long form projects for various streaming platforms.
Yeah, and you've got quite the diverse portfolio. Just looking, any of your credits, you've got, just for our listeners, your work has aired on Discovery and BBC and Netflix. You've shot a Disney Plus movie, Spin. And the reason that I initially heard about you and started following you many years ago was your work as this cinematographer on all the years of The Expanse. But quite a lot of work. You've got awards from the ASC for outstanding cinematography for Killing Lincoln. Tons of awards and things like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but The Expanse was your first foray into sci-fi. Is that right?
That's correct. It was also my first foray into long format television as well, into episodic television.
How did you get to that? I mean, that seems like it was a pretty. It seems tough, is it not, to go from normal? I mean, you were Steadicam, you were DPing, but like that seems like a little bit of a leap, or is it not? Does it not matter? Genre not matter?
I mean, I guess genre doesn't matter, but I guess it's how you get there that can be the leap. It wasn't something I was pursuing. I mean, this was sort of the era of the beginning of the golden era of streaming. House of Cards was kind of at its peak at that point. This was 2014, and I had kind of avoided long format television only because I had experience as a Steadicam operator in the early 2000s, working as a daily operator on various episodic shows that were shooting in Toronto. So I had a little taste of doing days here and there on shows, and I thought, this isn't. I didn't really enjoy it I couldn't see myself getting into it as a cinematographer, and I already was shooting and DPing a lot of commercials and indie projects and things, and I enjoyed that kind of work that I was doing. So I really didn't pursue it, but that was a different time of television, and then years go by, and then it's 2014, and starting to see what was happening on the streaming platforms, and thinking like, wow, like there's like this is a whole new type of storytelling. These like larger scope multi-episode shows, like House of Cards was sort of like that first big one that I had started thinking like, well, that would actually be kind of cool to work on a show like that. And it sort of opened my eyes to it. And then it was just by coincidence around that time that The Expanse came along. And it was because of a local rental house in Toronto, Sim Digital. They had a lunch meeting with one of the line producers, and they were, I guess, the line producer, who was Manny Danilon, who's from Toronto as well. He was asking them, saying like, hey, we're doing this big show is coming to Toronto. And at the time, it was the biggest science fiction show of its kind, because Star Trek hadn't come back yet. So that was before Star Trek, came back. Sure. The Sim guys passed my name on to Manny. And then I got a phone call from him out of the blue saying, hey, I got your name from these guys at Sim who I knew. And we described the kind of DP we were looking for, and they said we should talk to you. And I guess they looked me up a little bit and saw my background. And Terry McDonough was the like producing director who was starting The Expanse, and he had at that time had just done Breaking Bad, and so he had some pretty good success himself, and he was a British director, but I didn't know him and I'd never worked with him. But he had seen, I guess when they got my name, they'd showed him my work. And he had come from a documentary background as well, and he saw that in my reel and in my CV, and he's like, "This is the guy. We have to meet him." So when I went in to have an interview with them, Terry was there, and really he was my biggest proponent. I mean, he pushed them to consider me, and it's funny because one of the things they said to me up front was like, we're trying to find someone who's from outside the television box. We want someone who's going to bring something new to this. We like the idea of the fact that you've done documentary, because we want to kind of approach the show in that way with a sense of realism, but also someone who knows how to make things look good and has technical abilities. So I guess I ticked all the boxes. So one of the other American producers asked me in that interview, they said, well, we see you haven't done any episodic television in your resume. So how are you going to do this? Which is kind of ironic because it was the same. They were like, we want someone who hasn't done it, but we also see you haven't done it. So how are you going to do this? To me, I look at this as I've done a lot of smaller things that are chunks of what this show is as a bigger whole. So I just kind of think of it as applying those same strategies to a thing that's going to be instead of a few weeks of a shoot, it's like months of a shoot, and I can do that. And so when I finally actually got the job within that, a week or so later, it was a combination of super excited but also terrified, because I knew it was the biggest thing I'd ever done.
Sure.
And I was really going to have to draw upon everything I'd learned in like the 20 plus years up to that point of being in the business. I was going to have to literally use everything I had learned, and the rest is history, I guess you can say.
Yeah. And did it put pressure on you to come up with something new for them?
I mean, they already had the something new. Their concept was the something new. It was really about how do we, like, applying a philosophy to how we were going to light it and shoot it that fit the world, because they had already created an amazing lookbook. They actually had Weta make this beautiful PDF that was like a 60-page lookbook of the show's world. And I had read the script, and I looked at this lookbook, and I fell in love with the lookbook right away because I love the aesthetic and the vision of the future and all that. So they had kind of like that heavy lifting had been done. Now it was like, how do we light and shoot these worlds that have been beautifully rendered in these artist concepts? So, it was really about, okay, well, obviously we're going to have to create sets and environments that are completely 360 builds where there's ceilings, there's walls all around, so you can look in any direction, and it has to all be lit kind of practically. Because if the sets have ceilings, you can't have like film lighting hanging above it like you would on a kind of a traditional set. So it was like my philosophy right away was like, we have to like build in a ton of LED lighting that we have to custom make to fit these sets. I mean, and that's how all these shows are done that way now. But that at the time,
2014, it
hadn't really been done on that scale, and it was a big investment, because those kinds of things, you can't rent those lights. You have to buy that stuff. So you're literally buying like hundreds of thousands of dollars of LED ribbon and controllers and all that, because you can't rent it, and you're cutting it up. It's a consumable item that basically, once you've bought it, you own it. So they had to kind of take that leap of like, will this show have legs beyond the first season? Because if you're going to invest that kind of money, it works out great if it's going to get used for multiple seasons, because you amortize it over that. But of course, nobody knows that in the first season of a show. So they had to take that risk. And all of us were basically telling the higher powers, like, this is how we have to do it, and to convince them to spend that money.
Why do you think they took that risk?
I think because the people who were running it were smart. All the people involved were smart and understood that, knowing the world that they've set out to make, this is the way to do it. Everyone knew that. So it was just kind of like collectively getting everyone together into that mindset. But I mean, the show was very well run, and that's why I stayed with it for so long. I mean, the Narain, the showrunner, the Alcon people, the guys who wrote the books, Ty and Daniel, they were all equally involved and heavily involved, and they all are smart people and knew how to make a show like this from a technical level. So they gave me that freedom, and they trusted me, which was interesting, because they didn't know, like, nobody knew who I was. I was kind of an unknown at that point, but I think there was a collective, I had a good plan. It all made sense. And the crew that I was working with, and the production team and the production designer staff, everybody was like, this is the way we have to make this show. And everyone got behind it. And that's what we did.
And you did a lot of tests, right? In terms of just camera movement and Steadicam versus Movi. Can you talk a little bit about
Yeah, we did a ton of testing. Yeah. I mean, Terry was a big proponent. He really wanted, the Movi was new at the time, and they just released the bigger model.
And Movi being a camera stabilizer, just for people listening. Yeah. So it's a camera stabilizer, right? You're not tied to like your Steadicam, right?
Yeah, it's also called a gimbal. You see it a lot now. It's a thing you can hold, and there's consumer versions of these things that can fit small cameras. But at the time, it was new, and no one had ever used it on a big production in that sense. It was more of kind of like an indie filmmaker's tool at the time. And Terry had seen these demo videos of it, because there's a lot of viral videos of people shooting these crazy shots with them back in like 2013.
Stuff, right? It was like they were
going from escape from like someone on rollerblades and into a taxi and all that. So I was like, that's great. And I had experience with them, but I'm like, he wanted to shoot the entire thing with it. And I'm like, we have to really test this, because I don't have enough experience with it. And no one has, to know that we can rely on this thing to shoot like the majority of the show that way. And he liked the look and feel of it, and this thing, for zero gravity, and the idea it could float through spaces. And anyways, we tested it. We did a lot of tests, and we landed on that particular version of the Movi. And that's kind of, we use that tool heavily throughout the show. But it was, I mean, again, Terry pushed for it. He really wanted it. And I actually, I don't think I would have considered it if it wasn't for the fact that he really wanted to try it.
from what I understand, Jeremy, is that TV shoots fast. I don't know with the era of the last 15 years of prestige TV if they give you more time. But what I've seen of The Expanse is that, and I know people get offended when I use this word with regards to TV, but it looked cinematic. And are you afforded more time on the TV set to achieve that look? I mean, I'm seeing camera movements in there and certain setups that you don't normally see in TV shows, or I haven't seen in many. With the major exception to me would be Peter Deming's work in Twin Peaks: The Return, which I thought looked very cinematic. Is there more pressure on you to get these shots and maintain the speed of television production?
Well, I mean, you could maybe, if you compare it to the old model of a television show where you get like 8 days to make an episode, now you get 9 days, or you get an extra day. And then they also do this thing with blocks where you're shooting 2 blocks or 2 episodes together as a block. So you're combining the resource. One director does the 2 episodes, and you're block shooting 2 episodes together, which there's a certain efficiency to that in terms of combining resources of prep. But then what they'll do is they'll do what they call double up days. Some shows call it tandem days, where the next block, which is directed by a different director, will overlap the outgoing block. So you actually have this period where there's almost like there's 2 blocks shooting at the same time. So you're actually, from an overall production schedule of the entire run of the season, you're actually gaining a day or 2 per block by combining the 2 blocks. So you have this overlap day where you bring in another supplemental crew to sort of shoot the first day or 2 of the incoming block while the outgoing block finishes. And that's a common thing now. It's a bit of a headache for all departments, because then now everyone has to prep for the incoming block of the next episodes to be shooting at the same time as the outgoing one. And you have to have kind of like 2 sets running at the same time. So props, wardrobe, makeup, sets, lighting, everybody has to now, it's like a double workload for those couple of days. And it does afford you extra days in a sense, and a little bit more resources, because there's a savings overall at the end of the show. So it's kind of a blessing and a curse. Yes, you get a tiny bit more time, but you now have this like added headache of these double up days. So, and we basically did that throughout the entire run of the show. Like all 6 seasons we did that.
Right. I recently heard the cinematographer Roger Deakins. I know I think the idea might apply. I know we're talking TV versus film, but he said that early on in his career, he worked on he called them rock promos. They were music videos and documentaries, and documentaries. And that's what taught him to work fast and still achieve the look that he wanted, that the director wanted. I see that you have a very, very similar background. Was it music videos and documentary that gave you those skills to work in, this was your first foray into sci-fi and television, but did those skills help you in this new, or at the time, new venture?
100%. I mean, I drew so much from the documentary and music video world going into the Expanse that it was almost kind of like completely intertwined. I don't know if I could have pulled it off without having that background. I mean, that's the only background that I know, but I also know I fully drew from it, like the working with small resources and how to like think quickly, especially in a documentary world, when there's maybe no lighting department. It's just you and a sound person and maybe an assistant. And you're working in locations where you have available light, or you only have a couple of small lights, and it's you setting it up on your own. You kind of have to, you develop a set of instincts of knowing where to put the camera very quickly based on what the conditions give you. Right. So if you're walking into a place that you haven't necessarily had a chance to see before, and you have to shoot a sequence with a couple of people and they have to move through this space, whether it's outdoor, indoor, or a mix of both, you have to very quickly figure out what's the best way to do this visually that's going to look the best and tell the story. And you kind of you sharpen your skills that way, and you do get presented with that on an episodic kind of show or long format things where you have all these resources in the big machine, where you often have to like go back to that small mindset of like, if it was just me here and none of this giant machine, and we've got 5 minutes to make a decision, where does the camera go? And you have to block out all that giant circus of stuff there that you've got all these trucks and people and everything, but you're in a situation where you've got only a short running, out of time window to get the shot, and you have to think quickly of like, where do we put the camera in the least, amount of places to get what we have to get in like the hour we have left or whatever. And you are basically using all those skills that I find that I got from documentary. You're using those things when you're in those pressure moments of you've only got, like, you're running out of daylight, or we've got a child actor and they have to be off the clock in exactly 35 minutes and you've got 2 shots left to get. Where are you going to put the camera and how are you going to do it? And all those skills come into play at that point. All that knowledge of like documentary or music videos where you're working small and you have to get a whole bunch done in a small amount of time with limited resources, it scales up to on the bigger things.
I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember the exact quote, but I got the gist of it. I remember a few years ago, somebody asked the director, David Fincher, what is directing? And they were expecting some lofty answer. And he said, directing is that you have 15 minutes left to get the shot and only 5 minutes of sunlight. That is directing. Do you find that even though this is, you're working as a cinematographer, do you find that, it sounds like you find that to be the case?
I mean, I'm in the same boat as the director. I mean, we're both faced with that same challenge, that we both have to work together in those sort of crisis time crunch moments of how can we tell this story? How do we get what we have to get in this bit of time that we have left? And sometimes, the plan that you had of what you were going to do goes out the window because circumstances change and location issues happen and whatever. And now you have less time than you thought to get the thing you were going to get, or the weather changes, something like that. And you have to find a way to make it work in that little bit of time that you have. And I've been in those situations so many times. It's like, and there's many times on episodic television where you do feel that you've got this kind of like gun to your head of time throughout the day where you're aware constantly of like, we have this much time to get it. And the successful director DP partnerships are when you both understand that together, and the director is also kind of like subconsciously aware of that without kind of like being kind of strangled by that like worry of the time, but you both are thinking constantly of like, okay, like every little bit of time we spend in the first few hours of the day is going to be time that we wish we had in the last hour of the day. So you're always thinking of like, you want to be quick and efficient. You don't want to like shortchange yourself for what you are trying to get creatively, but know that extra take or those 2 or 3 extra setups that sometimes you think like, do we really need that? And that's often the directors that I've really found a good partnership with are the ones where you're both on the same page, where you're like, we got it. Like, you don't need another take because that extra 5 minutes or whatever, it all adds up. All those little 5 minute, 1 minute things that you're fussing over. If the director wants to keep fussing with something, at the end of the day, like oftentimes it's like it isn't really going to matter. You've got what you need. It's knowing when to move on, because that at the end of the day, that time is going to be so precious that you've banked by not doing that extra take or that one extra shot that you maybe don't need.
Yeah. So the Stanley Kubrick 150 take method is, I can see from your reaction.
It's a luxury that few people have. I mean, you've got like, months of production schedule, and that very few people have that luxury. Those are the top 0.5% of the filmmakers out there that have that luxury. The rest of us have the realities of time that we have to contend with. And like Revenant is an example of that. They made that decision of shooting as much as possible at magic hour or so basically it took them, they spent 9 months making that film. That if it was a smaller budget film, you'd have like 6 weeks to shoot that, and you'd have to shoot it in whatever time of day it is. But they had the time and the money and the clout to say, we're only shooting this at the right time of day. And that movie was like mostly magic hour, so that gives you got like an hour or 2 a day to shoot maybe, and you spend most of it rehearsing and planning, and then you're getting little tiny pieces of the film per day.
Yeah, like a Terrence Malick production.
Yeah, same.
I'd love to go back just for a second. Just it's so rare the people that we've talked to that for someone to last years on a show. You lasted the whole run. So was there something? Was it that relationship with the directors? Was it producers? Was it just your own something? Like, what allowed you to do that grind versus saying, you know what, I've done 3 years, let me go work on a film or doc or, do something else? What kept you there that whole time?
I mean, the funny thing is when I did the first season, I thought I'll just do the one and that's it. I'm not a TV guy. I'm not going to go into this world. I think what I realized, like Narain said something to me early on, like in my first season, our showrunner, and he was the showrunner for the whole run. And I learned a lot from him and how, because Narain has a huge experience of having done like CSI. And I mean, he really is one of the top showrunners out there. And he said, remember, you are like, I'm not going to be there very often. You are the sort of the visual gatekeeper of the show. And I kind of look at you as like my deputy when I'm not there. And remember too, the first 2 seasons of Expanse, I did them by myself. I didn't have an alternate DP, which at the time I didn't know any better. And I mean, it was crazy that I did that. But I did. And after the second season, I'm like, I can't do that anymore. But Narain gave me that lesson of you have that responsibility. You are like, if anything is going wrong that's weird or something's not the way that a director's making a bad call on something, like reach out to me and I will try and get involved. I'll do what I can. And I didn't think of it that way. I wasn't used to being told that I had that power and responsibility as a DP. But on an episodic show where you're sort of the lead DP and it started, there's like you are that person. And I didn't know, I hadn't thought of that yet. So over the course of that first season, and I got to the end of it, I realized we were building this world. We had all these books of story to tell. And I realized this is like a really rare opportunity where we have all this source material to work from. The guys who write it are involved with it. The showrunner is a super smart, like collaborative guy that I've developed a relationship with. And what other thing can I do that's going to have that, So that's when I decided to do the second season. And every year I'm like, well, should I go back again? Most of the people on that show came back. Like when we finished, I think Jason Brown, one of our producers, said that from the first season to the last season, something like they had like 80% crew retention.
Wow.
Which is that's like several hundred people.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Stayed. And that's very unusual for a show, an episodic TV show. And that speaks to the story we were telling, that everyone wanted to be there telling it, that the people running it were running it in a way that everyone wanted to stay and continue to work with them. It wasn't a toxic place. It was a functional, collaborative, enjoyable work environment. And that's why I kept going back. And it was always like, well, what else would I be doing? There was nothing else that came along that was better. And, I did do other things in between. So I used the time I had off because we would have months of downtime between seasons. And the thing is, we never knew if the show was going to be renewed each season until the last second. So usually like we'd wrap, then there'd be like 3-4 months of post, and whatever the last window of time, like where the network had to tell us if we were being renewed or not, it was always like the midnight of the day before they would say, okay, you're renewed. So there'd be months in between where we all just didn't know.
Amazon picking it up, right?
And then Amazon after season 3, but with Sci-Fi originally, Sci-Fi wouldn't tell us until like literally their contractual final day of when they can tell us, which was like months after we wrapped. So nobody knew if we were going back to it each year.
The job insecurity is just for everybody. It's
job insecurity. So I would take other things in between, and I made a conscious effort to take things that were very not sci-fi. So I did The Long Road Home. Yep. I did The Boys. I did other things in between the seasons of Expanse, so I could kind of just try other things and not be just the sci-fi person, And I was asked to do Star Trek when the new Star Trek came along. I was asked to do the first season of Star Trek because I had just done the Expanse, and they were actually building. We were at Pinewood.
Which one, Picard or Strange New Worlds?
No, Next Generation. The first one, Next Generation. Discovery. Okay. Sorry, Discovery. That was the first thing that they started, and they were actually building the sets at Pinewood. We were at Pinewood, and they were like across the way in the same complex building the sets for that. And so we were like seeing them building the sets while we were actually filming the first season of Expanse. And they asked me if I wanted to. Like, I was approached by the show, and it was a tough decision, but I thought, well, here's a show that I'm on that we've built ourselves from the ground up. It's a small family. We're doing something new. I have a very good relationship with the creative team. If I go to Star Trek, they're basically wanting me to go to that show to take the ideas that I've got from Expanse and inject it into Star Trek to give it a new thing.
Interesting.
But I'd also would lose my creative power in a sense, because it's a much bigger machine. It's a legacy show. You're dealing with a giant committee of people, and it's also something that's been done for decades. And I really felt that The Expanse was something special, and I should stay with it. So against the better advice of some of my colleagues and representatives and stuff, they were like, what are you crazy? Like, you got to take this. This is the prestige show that everybody wants to be on. And I'm like, I think I should stay with The Expanse.
It's like all those not horror stories, but all those people who go on to work for Disney for Star Wars, and they just feel trapped in the franchise, in the system.
Yeah.
They lose all their the reasons they were hired to begin with.
That's right. And I just knew, and that feeling stayed to the end. I had that level of creative control and collaboration with the showrunner and the people who ran the show. Like and in fact, my role kind of expanded and became more important as it went. So I felt that we were really empowered to tell this story in a way that I'm like, when am I ever going to get to do this again? I mean, I may never get to do this again, so I should stay with it.
So you strike me as somebody that has a strong sense of self, and maybe you're aware of it or not, but protects your mental health. You hear you had an opportunity to go work on Star Trek, but at the same time, I'm happy here. I have control here. This is a 80% retention. People are happy here. It's you said it wasn't toxic, and I'm not saying Discovery was a toxic. I don't know, but you chose to work on a production that felt special to you and that you were satisfied doing this hard work with, where, yeah, you could go to something bigger, probably paid more money, but you're rolling the dice on whether this is going to be a happy experience. And that tells me that you know who you are.
Well, I was certainly aware of that yes, Star Trek had probably 2 or 3 times the money that we had and much bigger resources and everything. But I just thought, this is still better. I'm happy here. And, and from what I heard between people that I knew who went on to that show, that it was actually a very difficult show in terms of just mentally for people who went on to it. So I was like, okay, I kind of confirmed what I thought might happen. But that being said, like, I certainly, because I had never done episodic television before, even with Expanse, as much as I loved it, I think what I had seen when I did Steadicam on those shows back in the 2000s is I met crew and others and cinematographers that I was working for as an operator, where I could just sort of get this sense of kind of like jaded bitterness from people. I could see it. I could, in that world of like kind of the grind of like regular episodic television back in the early 2000s. And I remember at that time thinking like, I never want to be that guy. I don't want to end up like that. So that's why I avoided that world. But then once I started doing Expanse, as much as I loved it and I totally was invested in every way, there were certainly days after like months into the run each season where I started to think like, do I really enjoy this? Because there's, you got good days and bad days on anything. And even on a show that you love, you're still going to have days where you're not quite into it, or you've got a challenging thing. And maybe there's like, it's just like, there's bad days. There's days you just don't enjoy it as much. And when you've got such a long run, I started thinking like, well, is this now my career? Like now that I'm doing this, the writing on the wall to me is that this will be what I'm going to do for the next 10 years of my life. And everything I do now will be a 3 to 5 month or 7 month commitment where you're in it. Like you have to fully drink the Kool-Aid and you're buying into that. You have to go and eat and breathe and live that world every day. And I started to think like, well, do I have that in me? Like, do I actually, because I could feel the burnout, like little tinges of it coming. And will I survive this? But what else am I going to do? Like, what other kind of work can I do? This is what I love, and this is my career. But when you do it that much and you do it that intensively, you definitely start to feel like the faint bits of burnout coming in, and just feeling like your creative energy is running out. It's like I have to go in every day and be positive and inspired and have good ideas and problem solve. And that takes a lot, it takes a lot out of your personal life and your relationships with your family and friends, and even your own partner. Like my partner, I mean, he knew what I was doing when I got into it, but it created stress for us at home. I mean, because even though he knew the drill and what I have to do, like it affected us for sure. And I look around, I see people all around me in the industry who've had marriages fall apart and divorces, and it affects their children and all that. Like it is a very hard industry in that way, because it takes you away from your family for such a long time.
Not just the hours. So many people are just going to other countries, other other locations. It's not like it's around the corner for everybody.
I mean, right now I'm 4 hours away from home, and I won't be going home until this is over, which is in like 7 weeks. So I won't really see people for a long time. I'm very aware of it, and it still is an ongoing concern for me, because every job I take, I think, okay, well, that's another 7 months or 6 months of my life, and how am I going to get through this? And do I have the creative energy to get through this? So I'm very selective, obviously, with what I take, because I get offers for things all the time where I'm like, I can't see myself doing that for 5 months. I think you learn to start gauging yourself of like, what do I have this in me? You look at the project and what it is, and you think about what it's going to entail, and you think, do I love this enough that I'm going to make it to the other side? And it's an ongoing thing. I still am figuring that out. And I have, I turn 50 next year, and I think, okay, well, I've got another, I don't know, 15 years of this in me. Can I realistically do this for that long at the level that I want to do it at? And I think the answer is I have to do less. I have to work a bit less, and to survive that, because it is a thing I think about, of like, mentally, how do I maintain that and not burn out, not become jaded? I mean, I pride myself in being not a yeller, and collaborative with people, and kind. And I mean, I really, our film set floors really need that. And I mean, I have to be the leader in that way, because I run all those departments and so many people. So if I'm a bad person in that way, it affects everybody else. So I have to go that extra mile of like not wearing anything on my sleeve that is bothering me, which it means you end up kind of bottling stuff up. Even if you're not having a good day, you still have to go in and smile and be positive and not lose your shit with people. And that can be hard. Like you have to find a way to like deal with that, and I've seen a therapist a bunch of times who understands my industry, and there's all the insecurities that come with our industry too, of like, am I good enough? You self-doubt yourself all the time. Like it breeds insecurity on top of all the other stuff of the long hours and everything else, and the creative energy.
You talked about the struggle of keeping it all in balance, being being somebody on set that doesn't yell, trying to make the schedule work for your partner, trying to make it work for you creatively, but without getting burnout. But not everybody on the set is like that. Mm-hmm. And I think a big topic where I don't know if I'm ever going to see it fall in my lifetime is that a lot of people come from trauma, and then they end up in these very, very intense, stressful work situations, 12, 14, 16-hour days, despite them maybe being great at their job, it leads to not just burnout, but meltdown, or a reliance on amphetamines, or other drugs to get them through it. I mean, are you seeing this, and are you seeing it grow?
I think, I mean, on a positive side of that, I think there's a lot more healthy choices being made. I see people, the drug and alcohol thing, I see less of now. I mean, earlier in my career, I was aware of a lot of people who drank heavily and would come to work smelling like booze or hungover. Like, it was a constant culture in our business, and I see a lot less of that now. I think the pandemic gave us all a reset in a good way. I think people started to appreciate their personal lives more. There's certainly a lot more talk of people taking, like I see it on my crew where like the grips and lighting and camera department, where one of the heads of those departments like, oh, so and so isn't coming in tomorrow because they need to take some time, or they've got a thing going on. So and of course they come to me, is that okay? Or one of my keys will say, hey, I need a day tomorrow. I got to go. I have this appointment, or I got to deal with my kids thing or whatever. And of course I say, yeah, of course. Like, I never say no to that, because I know what it's like being, and because I don't have that luxury as the DP. I can't do that really very easily to say, hey, I'm going to take the day off tomorrow. So when someone in one of my departments asks for that, I say, of course, like, I understand, so I think
they ask for a good reason. They have a good reason
they'll tell me, like, yeah, like my kid has a thing, or I've got to go to this, like, a dance recital, whatever, some important thing with their kid, or they have whatever. I always say, yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I understand what it takes to be in this business, and I don't want to keep people from those kind of things. And I think it's gotten better. There's less. There's a lot more awareness of mental health. It's more openly discussed. I think. Even with the sort of the more macho departments like the grips and stuff like that. You mean I can see that those people, and there's a lot more, and there's a lot of women in those departments now too. It's become a lot more diverse. That there's more of an awareness of your mental state. You know, it's not perfect by any means, but certainly compared to what it was 20 years ago, it's a lot better.
That's great. Don?
Yeah, I want to go back and ask you a question because you brought up like the creative impulses and you mentioned Discovery, and like The Expanse was pre-volume filming, right? And
yes,
I think Discovery leans very heavily on that. So I'm curious, any experience on filming a volume, sort of if that feels like stifling a little bit, just any thoughts on that front?
I mean, I don't have a ton of experience with it. I've done a little bit. I've shot a couple of small things on a volume stage, and we actually looked into it in the last season of Expanse.
You did, and a volume stage, just for people listening, it's basically a large curved LED wall. So instead of doing months of post production afterwards, all the pre production happens earlier. You stick up a sun there, the sun stays up there, and the light plays on the character. Roughly,
yeah, it's the Mandalorian thing that people are most familiar with, and that's so we looked into that, and it didn't work for Expanse only because the workflow was backwards. Everything had to happen up front, and the show, when you're on a show that's already, the train is already moving like that, it's very difficult to change your schedule. Like, oh, now we need 3 months before we shoot to build all the assets for the wall. And there's certain things it's really great for, in my experience, and it definitely will become more and more used, but it does have limitations. It's like some people look at it as like, oh, it's the holy grail. Like, we can do everything in there. You don't have to go anywhere anymore. But you can't interact with it in the sense of like, it's great for like big vistas, or like you're building a piece of a landscape and that's like the vista beyond, or you're in like a ship or like a boat or something, and it's the ocean and the sky beyond.
But foreground elements.
You still need the floor, and you still need the foreground things. And the trick is, like, if it's certain kinds of spaces, like actors can't like walk into it. You can't go down a hallway in it, or around a corner, or move big distances, because you're still constrained within that like floor space that's around the wall. So it's great for certain things, but it also there are a lot of costs, and you also can't focus on it directly. When you get certain angles you can, but if you focus directly on it, you start seeing the pixels.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it has limits, and it's not cheap. It's very expensive. So it's the amount of time you have to build the assets, and
I just feel like I'm watching a show, and you see the actors, they're walking certain steps, then cut because they hit the end. What they can do.
Yeah. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is something that I don't know for sure, but doesn't it, depending on the size of the screen, doesn't it kind of limit your focal lengths and certain camera moves and stuff like that? So you're just stuck in a certain very limited range of focal lengths, and I mean, that has to be difficult. No,
it is tricky. Well, you can't, it's tricky to look straight, like very steep, like looking down, or very low looking up, because you start seeing off the wall, and then you're getting into like VFX anyways to extend what's there. I mean, a lot of those not all, but there's certainly a great deal of VFX cleanup that happens with those wall shots anyways. It doesn't eliminate post entirely.
What you see is what you get, and that's it.
Yeah. You still have some cleanup to do.
And not to get too in the weeds here, but what about, full on green screen, but with Unreal? Is that something, that's something we're exploring on basically here, just on on the commercial corporate side of what I do, but like,
it's a thing.
Freedom.
Well, we looked at that too. There's a company in Toronto called Mavericks Visual Effects, and they did a lot of work on Handmaid's Tale, and Brendan Taylor is the guy who runs the company, and he's very much been developing that, and other companies are doing it too. But I've gone into their shop a few times and seen what they're doing, and the whole notion of having real-time comping of the background. So if you're on a blue screen or green screen set with an extension piece, the ability to have, like, to me, that's actually an even more interesting or a universal application of that technology, where you're using it to augment in real time the extension of what you're going to be putting into the shot that you're shooting of. Like, you've got half of a set and then green screen beyond that. You can put the asset doesn't have to be fully done, because you're not actually photographing it, but you can have it on the monitor as a preview. And so when you move the camera and you're lighting it, you at least have the thing that's going to be there on the monitor as kind of a reference of like, this is what it will be, knowing that of course it's going to get rendered better and more later, but at least you have a good high quality preview of it. And that to me is really useful because now you're not having to guess, looking at it. And you may have like a piece of concept art and then the visual effects person's there and you're looking at this shot with a giant piece of blue in it. And you're like, well, what exactly is back there? How is the light coming from there? And you're trying to like make that work with what's really in front of the camera. But if you could see it on a monitor, you're like, oh, well, now you can really tune it in.
Yeah.
In the days of film, they relied on, color timing in the wash of the film. Now a lot of cinematography, no, that's not the case, but some part of the cinematography is done in post and the color correction. Do you have a lot, is your voice involved in that process too, or is it left out and you're frustrated if somebody, completely changes, shooting in RAW, they can change all sorts of things.
Sure. Well, I make sure that I'm involved. I contractually make sure that I'm involved. With the Expanse, I was involved with every episode's color timing. So to me, it's as important as the shooting part. Like it's like a photographer who doesn't go into the darkroom, and let somebody else print the picture for them. It's like there's so much influence on what that final thing will be that also is tied into what you intended when you shot it. So you kind of need to be there because there's certain things that when you're shooting it that you're going to time it a certain way, that you have to be there to make sure that that part is done, because oftentimes you're thinking of the final color as you're shooting, knowing you're going to make it cooler or you're going to darken a certain thing.
Right.
That we're not going to spend time flagging off that wall.
Right.
We know we can just darken that one little thing. So you need to be there to make sure the colorist knows that and that you can do it how you want. So I always make sure that I'm there. I think and most of my DP colleagues, like it's something we make sure we're there.
What about shots that are completely CG, like the way the distant sun, the light might hit a ship? Are you involved even in that part of it?
Yeah, because we still color grade those shots, and we'll often see previews of them and chime in on what it should be. Like, if the sun isn't bright enough, like we went through a lot of that with Expanse because there were so many visual effects vendors. I think that we have like 6 or 7 vendors, and the creation of the ships and set extensions and things was split up amongst different vendors. So it was a trick to get everyone to be consistent with how they lit their ships in space. And some were darker than others, some were brighter. And we ended up, as we got through it, and Narain was very specific with that stuff too. He had very specific notes with how the space shots looked, is that we started to have to create like almost like a Bible of like, how do you expose for the ship? So when the vendors are making these things and they're lighting it virtually, like we would say, make sure you give us this stop range of like the shadows of the ship should be this many stops under the brightest part. Because we don't, because sometimes it'd be like the highlights were too bright and there wasn't enough in the shadows. So we couldn't compress it. And then, so we would send the shots back and say, you have to redo this.
Yeah.
And that's, so that once we got into that rhythm, it became kind of a pattern of, this is how you expose for ships.
When people think about a cinematographer, what they're probably not thinking about is Foley and sound. But you have an interest.
True.
So in a very strange pivot, this is one of the things that you and I've talked, you've sent me something in the past and this is how we've communicated, but like, talk to us. What is Foley? That's for you, Trevor, because I know you went to film school and I don't know what they did at school. But your interest in it and, going back to track stars, I know, and it seems odd because usually most, at least here in Boston, all the DPs that I know, if anything related to sound is near them, they just push them to the side and say,
sure.
Yeah.
That came from sort of a childhood interest in sound. I was interested in pictures and sound as a kid. And I think if I hadn't gone into photography, I would have ended up in the sound world in some way, whether it's in sound design or music production. I would have, that's something I've always had an interest in. And so because of that, as a kid, I remember seeing on, our local, like our version of PBS basically in Ontario, which was TV Ontario. They used to show like, art films and like National Film Board stuff. And there was a film on there called Track Stars, which was made in '79, I believe, and it was Andy Malcolm, who is one of the foremost Foley artists in the world, made this film for fun with his friends in '79, and it kind of became this thing that you'd see on TV randomly at like, late at night or whatever. And so I remember seeing that, and that's kind of what exposed me to what I didn't really know what Foley was as a kid. And I think as soon as I saw that film, I understood the concept of you make a movie and then you have to replace certain sounds later, and you have craftspeople who go into a studio and basically mimic the sound of footsteps and picking things up off a table and closing doors and all that kind of stuff. Whatever wasn't captured well on the film set, you're replacing it all later, but it has to be performed by somebody to the picture in the studio. And that idea, that was a new thing for me as a kid. And I always had this interest in it. And my parents knew that. And when I was 16, they surprised me. And this, of course, is way before the internet. This, like, I don't even know how they figured this out, but they somehow managed to figure out where Andy worked in Toronto. And it was a company that became Deluxe, but back then was called Filmhouse.
Yep.
And it was downtown Toronto. And Andy worked there. That's where he had his studio. And they've managed to figure that out. And they surprised me from my 16th birthday that they were going to take me to meet Andy. And Andy was into it. And I remember my dad drove me into the city and dropped me off. And he said, well, if you're bored, I'll come back and get you, whatever. But I was dropped off at like 9 a.m. And I stayed there for the entire day and watched them work. And I ended up going back several times and visiting with them and watching various films that Andy was working on. And it left like a huge impression on me. And of course, I never went into that world, but I always appreciated it and always had a love for it, even though it ended up being not the thing I pursued. And then years later, I hadn't, probably like 25 years went by, and I knew that Andy was out there, but I kind of lost touch with him. I went off and did my thing. And then I remember thinking like, oh, I wonder what Andy's up to these days. I knew that he had moved out of the city, that he'd left that studio in Toronto, and he'd started his own studio north of the city, like an hour outside of the city on a farm property. I knew he'd done that. I'd heard from the grapevine. So I tracked him down. I looked online. I found his company and I reached out and said, "Hey, do you remember me? I was that kid that came and visited you." And he wrote back right away and said, "Of course I remember. And why don't you come out and like have a tour and let's have lunch and all that." And that's when I had this idea of like this story, like his story wasn't known. Like it wasn't really a known thing unless you were in the industry, people knew, but outside of that, people didn't know. And I thought, well, this is such a great Canadian story, a Canadian innovation story, because he's known internationally, but just as an international film kind of story. So that's where the idea came from. And I went and met with them, and Goro was with him because Goro sort of has sort of been passed the torch in a certain sense. And yeah, the idea began there. We spent the next 4 years kind of making that film, Footsteps.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that whether it's lighting and camera or Foley, it's all about making this story seem real to people, and you need those things to work well together. If one is
totally,
and it's lackluster, it's not going to work, right?
Right, and when Foley, and Andy says this, when Foley is done well, you shouldn't even know that it's there. And that's the thing, is that when people actually see the process in the film that we made, is most people who don't know about it are surprised because they've never been aware of it when they watch a film. When it's done well, you don't know that it's happening. So when you see the process, you're like, oh, wow, like that's a lot of work that goes into this. You don't realize there's all these people that spend weeks toiling away in a dark room, making all this stuff sound real.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you, I teach a couple of college courses part-time, and like my intro class, they're always blown away by it and seeing it and trying to do it. It just, and I'm like, no, this is a profession, and it's hard and time consuming, and you need resources and talent and creative. And
it's not taught. It's not a thing you can take a course for.
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
a thing it's like, you can only go and like, if you want to do it, you apprentice with someone and you figure that out on your own, but there's no like course to be a Foley artist.
Yeah. I did a 6-track analog mix in film school, and like there was no guidance.
Right.
No guidance. And I didn't know. We didn't know.
That's why I didn't go to film school, Trevor. I figured it was a waste of time.
You talked about stresses on the set. Now let's talk about stresses outside the set right now with the strike. What are you seeing?
It's very difficult. I mean, and of course everyone just came out of like, COVID was only so long ago where we all were out of work for 6 months. And now we're basically in another period of like, it's going to be another 6 months period where we're out of work. Only this time there's no government subsidies to help you. There's no, because it's not a government created lockdown.
Right.
It's a union locked down. So certainly there's lots of people that I know that are out of work. Thankfully, there is actually a fairly busy commercial industry in Toronto. So a lot of the crew that are out of work right now, not all, but some are making do with like the commercial work. It's not fully supplementing the work they would have had in long format.
But I think
but
that's
it's helping.
That's one of the things, like when we were talking about in our first episode with Dave Blass, the production designer for Star Trek, and you worked with him on The Boys, I believe. He's like, we're just sitting here. I was like, I'll take the first mayonnaise commercial that pops up. And I think a lot of people who listen to our show, like, don't like that's going to blow their mind that like there's all these people who had these big credits, big names, great work, and they're just sitting around, and like maybe there's some commercial work that pops up, and that's it.
There is some, but there is also like, massive competition now because everyone's out of work. So there is that commercial pool of people.
Right.
I mean, there are commercial DPs and especially in Toronto, there are crews that specifically just do commercials. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the DPs, there are DPs that mainly just do commercials. But now all the other DPs that do everything else are also now available. So it's kind of the pick of the litter for ad agencies and stuff. They can kind of get the superstars of DPs and directors and stuff because they're all not working right now.
And and I saw an interview with you, I think from a while ago, where you're talking about ad agencies and how you have anyone can have all these credits, but if you don't have that food commercial or the car commercial, are you past that? Are they still that picky up there that they're like, if you haven't done this exact thing that we want?
It's the same.
It's the same.
It hasn't changed. I mean, put it this way, like because I've been out of commercials for so long, in the time that I've had off, I'm like, well, I could do some commercials here and there, and it doesn't really affect my summer break. I can work a few days here and there, and it keeps me in that world a little bit. But because I haven't been in commercials for that long, and also because of the strike, and everyone else is available, I haven't done any commercial work. There's been nothing. I've had like one or two holds, but they've all not happened because I've lost the job to other people that have more like recent commercial credits. Yeah. So my long format work doesn't matter. I don't have my commercial reel is old now. It's dated by the standards of which people want to see. So sure. I can't get commercial work right now.
So what are you hoping to do next? The film, this film you're working on is done. I mean, do you have something that you want, like a passion project down the road you want to do? Is there a show or film or type of series that is dream show for you? Trevor hates when I ask these questions. He says they're softball.
Oh no, I'm
generally curious.
I have an even worse softball question coming, so I can't.
I mean, I can't judge.
I was supposed to go back. I mean, I enjoyed working on the first season of Accused, and I had a very good relationship with the showrunner there, and I enjoyed this. It was an anthology show, so every episode's a different story, different people, and I enjoyed that. Yeah. It was very fresh, hard to make on the schedule that they had it because it's basically like a network television show, which I'd never worked on before. So it's a smaller budget and even tighter time schedule than a streaming show. But I still enjoyed working on it, and I wanted to go back to do the second season because I had such involvement with it. And in fact, like they very nicely offered me some co-producer credits on that show because of my involvement. And I thought, well, I want to continue to do that. So I'm supposed to go back to that show. But of course, with the strike happening, we don't really know how that affects the timing of it. So that is the next thing I'm intending to go back to. I don't have anything personally that I'm working on right now because we've just been so busy with our personal lives and like the stuff we're doing. The focus has just been not film stuff.
Mm-hmm. Would you consider ever just going straight to producing full time down the road, or?
I have produced some of our own projects where I've just been the producer and I had no hand in the DPing of it. I mean, I like the idea of producing. I've enjoyed producing the stuff that we have done or co-producing things. So, because to me, that's kind of like you get to set the stage for telling the story and put together the teams and all that kind of thing. So I do enjoy that kind of work. And I think I've discovered that I have a bit of a knack for it. But as of right now, I mean, it's something I'm sort of slowly working on as a side thing that maybe one day it'll become bigger. I mean, who knows?
Sure. All right, Trevor, I'll let you have the last word here. You're welcome.
Jeremy, I'm really sorry to do this to you, but I've got to do it. Favorite cinematographer, alive or dead, and favorite or maybe and favorite contemporary cinematographer.
Okay, that is a way more ridiculous question than when I was. Oh my God,
I hate those questions.
Yeah, terrible question.
Let me just think for a second, because I mean, there's so many of the obvious ones, but they all get said all the time, and it's like. I mean, it's funny because I've often contemporary cinematographers. typically, I mean, I usually name the people that I come up with because
Sure.
I look at their work and I admire them, and they don't get shouted out very often, and we all came from the same place. So for me, it's like there's Boris Majovsky, there's Brendan Stacy, there's Tico Polakakis. Those are the people that I came from. Adam Marsden is a good friend of mine and very talented DP. Those are my current contemporary favorites because they're the people that we all came from the same place. So I look at what they do. It's different from my own work, but we came from the same place. So I can relate to it more because we are of the same community, but we all do different things. And I think I have a relationship with them. So for me, like there are others that I don't know who I admire their work, but I don't know them. So it's harder to kind of fully appreciate because you don't have a dialogue with them. So that's how I would answer the I guess the current contemporary ones.
That's a great answer.
You know what? I'm not going to let Trevor end it. Let's end it with this. If there was one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you started, what would it be?
God, that's terrible.
I could end it on yours, Trevor. Come on.
That is such a terrible question.
What would I know? What would I wish I knew then when
What wish
when I
you
started?
would do when you started?
See, he doesn't
he
doesn't even understand it because it's so stupid.
Because I see a lot of students starting out and they're like, what do I need to know? I'm like, just get lucky. Do good work, get lucky.
I mean,
nice.
I think it's funny because I think the things that I know now that I wish I knew then, I in retrospect, I already inherently knew those things. I wasn't aware that those were the keys to success. But now I look back, it's like, well, I already was doing those things then. I just didn't know that those were the things that I actually had to be doing to get where I wanted to go. And that was like, it's like, don't give up on things, learn how to deal with failure. That failure turns into other opportunities because there's always going to be failure in this business of not getting the gig you wanted. And also be a good communicator and be kind and respectful to people. That's like number one. Like that comes back to you. You hear people say, oh, like we've heard you're really great to work with and you're kind and collaborative and all that. I mean, that's key. I mean, that was in my nature, I guess, when I started, and I wasn't really aware that those are kind of like the key things you should be doing. But certainly that's the advice I would give. It's those you have to make sure you have a good grasp on those things, and you got to be a good people person and you want to be open to collaborating with people and people's ideas, and basically be humble enough to know that you're not always going to know the answer to something, and that some solution might require talking to your gaffer or your grip or whoever and say like, hey, like, I don't know, how should we do this thing? Like, I'm thinking of this, but what, like, do you have a suggestion? Or I'll tell them my idea and they might come back and be like, well, actually, you should probably like maybe consider it this because they've done it maybe differently with another DP or on a bigger thing that I haven't had that experience with. So it's like just the best idea wins, really.
Great. Thank you. A good way for people to follow you.
I guess probably right now, my website's kind of a bit outdated. It needs to be changed, but it's there. I mean, they can go to my website. It has all the basic stuff.
I like the case study, like on the forest for the Expanse. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's good stuff there.
It's
just I haven't updated it in a while, but I would say Instagram. Like, I'm not on any other social media platform really, so Instagram has my current doings on there, and they can always reach out through that.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you,
guys.
Jeremy, and I hope you have the best career. You seem like a really great guy.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Trevor, I love talking to Jeremy. What you think?
Yeah, great interview. Really liked him a lot. The kind of guest would love to have back and discuss more. We barely skimmed the surface with that one.
And before we sign off from this episode, Trevor, I got to tell you something. Something's been really bothering me. So my TikTok feed is blowing up with all these people having emotional reactions to episode 5 of Ahsoka. And I watched it with my kid. She liked it. I won't spoil it if you haven't seen it, but basically I didn't have that reaction, and that kind of annoys me and made me think of you, and it got me more annoyed. I've seen all the movies millions of times. I've seen all the Disney shows. Fine. I have not watched that much of the Clone Wars or Rebels cartoons. I've seen a little bit to know a little bit, but people who've watched Rebels completely love Ahsoka. And as someone coming in to see this live action first season show, I keep waiting for something more, and it's not there for me. And I think you may be right.
I'll be real quick. I only watched the first 15 minutes of the first episode. I stopped. I called a buddy of mine, and I asked him what was happening. I don't understand what's going on. Oh, he's like, oh, dude, you need to watch Rebels. And that's when I was like, I'm out.
Now, why is that? Why don't you want a richer experience?
I just don't have the time right now. And that, you have to make decisions. And again, this is the problem with world building storytelling, is that, a lot of things are predicated on you watching something previous to it. And that something previous to it can be 10, 30, 60 I don't know. And I don't want to make that kind of commitment. I'm sorry. I appreciate that this is changing. This is the new way of storytelling, and I support it. And it's just not for me.
It doesn't sound like you support it, Trevor, but
no, I do. I really do. I do believe that things change, and some things change that I'm not used to, and I maybe don't like, but I do feel it's my responsibility to understand it and to let the masses. I mean, this is really let the mass, but like, this is apparently what's popular, and they love it, and
let them eat cake is what you're saying? Let them eat cake? Is that your...
No, just, why fight over this stuff?
Well, here's the thing. Exactly why fight over it. Why have a podcast and fight over things, Trevor?
Well, it's you and I fighting. When I go onto message boards and I just see fight, like 10,000 strangers fighting over an episode of television, I'm like, it's
too much.
It's too much.
I will say there is a show that I think does it well, is that, Lower Decks. Okay, Lower Decks, for those who don't know, is a sort of PG-13 take on an extension of the Star Trek The Next Generation world. It's a little raunchy cartoon. There's a ton of inside jokes and references, but you don't need to know them to enjoy the show. I watch it with my kid. She doesn't know half the references. It doesn't matter because the whole story isn't predicated on you watching 7 seasons of Next Generation and Deep Space Nine to understand what's happening or what the relationships are with the characters. There's just little Easter eggs that might be there that enriches the experience, but it's not what the story's about. Whereas I'm feeling like with Ahsoka, you really needed to have an emotional connection to these cartoon characters to have this look from one character to another, who in the narrative of this now 5-episode show, you haven't gotten anything. You've gotten one line of dialogue between, with these characters, and that's it. So, I'm sure plenty of people feel the exact opposite because it adds so much and they love every second of it, but it's a little too exclusive for me.
Fair enough.
So I will give you your point on this episode.
I will take my point and gloat about it, because this is the only time you're going to give me anything.
It is the only time at the end of a very long hour and a half episode that I will give you some credit, Trevor.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I know how difficult that was for you.
I feel like this should be the holiday episode where everyone's happy at the end.
If you listeners could just see us right now, both of us are exhausted and we're tired.
Why are you tired, Trevor?
I am tired because work has been very, very, very hectic recently, and I screwed up yesterday big time, and I pride myself on not screwing up, and I completely missed a deadline, not by hours, not by a day, but by nearly 2 weeks. I have no idea how. I don't know. It just slipped my mind, and had to go and make the apology tour, and kind of bummed out about it. And then I went to a concert last night that I had tickets for months ago, and that just wiped me out. So I'm exhausted.
For our listeners, the concert that Trevor's referring to is the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. He is a front rower following Taylor Swift from state to state, is my understanding.
I live that Swiftie life. What can I say?
Well, on that note, I think it's time to let everyone go. So
I
Trevor,
did not go see Taylor Swift.
Who'd you see? Oh my God, it's worse than that.
Yeah, it to some of you it might be. I saw a band called Baby Metal. It features
babies. Metal babies?
3 Japanese women who dance like anime characters and they sing songs about food while one of the most talented death metal bands I've ever seen in my life plays in the background. And I think I love it. It's my second time seeing them. They're great. Go on YouTube, look up Baby Metal, Gimme Chocolate, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And they're fantastic. And they're not some flash in the pan. They get people like Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine and Rob Halford from Judas Priest touring with them and working with them and coming on stage. And a lot of people love them, and they're a really, I swear, they're a really talented group.
Trevor? Mm-hmm. It is amazing and unbelievable to me that you are not taken. So ladies, if this sounds like a good night out with you, Trevor's available.
I'm not available. I'm not dating.
He comes highly recommended.
No, I don't.
I highly recommend him. If you're well, we'll talk about it another time. Thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget to send us your comments and questions. We'll try to get to some fan mail one of these days at nowinscenariopodcast@gmail.com. That's nowinscenariopodcast@gmail.com. You can go to our website, nowinscenariopodcast.com, and you can subscribe to our podcast on all your favorite platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and a dozen others. Thanks so much, Trevor.
Thank you, Don.